Did you know that as much as 42% of startups fail as they just couldn't find enough people interested in buying their product? So let me ask you a question. How much time and money have you already invested in building a platform, developing features that you think that people want to buy, might want to use, yet you are not sure because you haven't really gone into a product validation or ideation strategy? The build it and they will come mindset can work for some people, but let's be honest, it's really risky and costly for your business. And to create a fantastic product is not enough to guarantee success. So the key to product validation and achieving product market fit lies in answering a crucial question. Are you solving the right problem that customers will pay for and will fall in love with your solution? If you are unsure on how to tackle that, well, you're in luck, because in this special episode, I'm bringing to you a fantastic guest, Rich Cristina, the co-founder of MentorLabs, the principal director of Founder Institute London, and just a startup guru and expert. Rich has a wealth of experience transforming startups, taking ideas to reality. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Nelly Makangu from Athena Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning questions that you have on your way to Series A Plus. Subscribe and tune in every week for top tips to meet amazing guests, startup founders, investors, and more. More importantly, sit back, relax, and let's welcome to the stage, Rich Cristina. Hi, Rich. How is it going?
Hi, Nelly. Going really well. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to finally have the discussion with you. And as for those who don't know, I'm also a director on Founder Institute London, and we've had a lot of discussion, and I've had the pleasure to see firsthand the magic that Rich can do with startups. So I'm really excited to have this discussion here to help anybody listening to really start thinking on the best strategy to grow their startups. But first, let's discover one platform which is up and coming and excited and needs to be on your to-do list. Rich, can you tell us a little bit more about MentorLabs?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I just have to concur that, working with you recently, helping founders in this area has been a real privilege. So thank you again for having me. So whilst we've been working in the accelerator program, which is a fantastic program, we've graduated hundreds of founders through that and seen them go from a concept to launch. In that discovery, we, as one of the lead directors, we found a potential gap in the market where some founders were not ready for a formal program or like an accelerator, and they were shying away at this early stage for giving away equity as well. So this continuously was staring me in the face over the years, running the accelerator, and I thought, and I was being asked by some of these founders to mentor them outside of the program, and I thought, I got to explore this. It keeps coming up. There seems to be, this was my hypothesis, there seems to be a founder needing help, has an idea, is busy working full time or busy in life, family, etc., and can't commit to an accelerator in terms of time and the way accelerators push founders through quickly, and they want to do it more on demand in their own pace. So that's essentially what the platform is. I've gathered a pool of wonderful experts and professionals in their own right, and people who are experienced in raising funds and starting their own companies, and experienced in in startups essentially. So they're on the platform and they're accessible, and you can, founders can book them, in hour blocks without the need to commit to anything long term. So no subscriptions, no giving away of equity. Just, hey, I need to drop in, spend an hour with an expert, say like yourself, get some gold nuggets, go away in my own time and work on that, and come back as and when I need. So it's the on-demand go-to-market difference, the difference in our go-to-market rather. So that's essentially MentorLabs right there.
And one of the things that I also find attractive when looking at MentorLabs, not just from the perspective of the founders, but when I look at it from the perspective of a mentor or an expert in the industry, whichever field that will support the startup ecosystem, is being able to have a place where I can have one-to-one discussions and really build that trust with different founders. I go to a lot of networking events or meet a lot of random people. Even on LinkedIn, there are people that contact me and say, oh, I've seen your live show and I had a specific question about XYZ. Yes, we can grab usually the first chat, I love getting to people. So I usually have like a 30-minute discussion. But then after that, there are people who are not prepared to go into a deep relationship, but maybe because they don't personally know me, or maybe because they don't feel like they're at that stage, or they just kind of want to touch the waters. And as from a founder perspective, being able to use MentorLabs and say, actually, if you really want to have an hour dedicated to us working together, here's the link. Let's have it there. It's easy for me. I don't have to think about payment structures. I don't have to think about invoicing. And we go there. We have the discussion. I leave them some review, and I can just continue my life.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective that you bring to that. We, all the mentors on our platform have run businesses in their own right, and they offer different services to founders. And it's almost like, if I could refer to it, like a testing ground, as you say. So it's like, well, look, you're meeting, you get reach outs all day long on LinkedIn, you get through network events, as you said, and there's a lot of people saying, hey, can I have some of your time, and can we discuss this? Yeah. If you're a mentor on our platform, you can quite easily just give out the link and say, here, book some time with me. And obviously that will, like you say, it streamlines that process. It's a no-brainer for a mentor. We pay the mentor, of course, and it's all automated, and it's just easy. But we expect mentors to then, because there's got to be a synergy. The founder has to like the mentor has to like the founder, etc. And that's really important when I call it a testing ground. So instead of a founder having to commit to a mentor's services, which will be a lot more expensive because it's a long-term program of some kind, for instance, or they're going to do more work, this is just almost like an initial consultation. In that hour, deep dive into some problems, get a feel for the founder's issues. The mentor's obviously got an hour to discuss several of them and write up some actionable feedback and go, well, there you go. This is what I would do. Here's some actionable feedback. And that's an important part of our platform's brand promise. All our mentors will give actionable feedback. It's not high level discussions, because and you can, there's a lot of YouTube videos and content out there which is all good content to start a founder off, but to then take it to that next level, which is, let's dive into a couple of issues you have and deep dive and unpack it. They can do that in that initial consultation on our platform before they might commit to something more long-term with the mentor. So they're testing the mentor out, the mentor's testing the founder out, in a sense. And this is that gap that we have discovered between a founder we like affectionately call them entrepreneurs. They got good ideas, they talk to their family, their friends, they scope it out that way, and they might talk to some colleagues, but they're just going to some free events and just talking about it. Then it's the founder that's ready to commit and says, I think this is a good idea, and I'm now going to spend my spare time, evenings, weekends, while they're working full time, um, researching and putting the bare bones of a business plan together. And then it's like the choice is go onto an accelerator or a formal program, or test it out first on a platform like MentorLabs and get that first bit of feedback into what they're doing, their go-to-market, their idea, and so on and so on. So yeah, I hope that answers your question and made a little bit more sense of the context of where we're positioning this platform as that stepping stone into the next step with mentors or other programs.
Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot of value in there in terms of the mentors and as well as the founders. Looking at your experience, when we, as I was mentioning in the intro, you've been everywhere, in the startup world, and as we kind of touched up on to, we talked about that a little bit when we were preparing for the episodes. You've had such an amazing career that has helped you to see very different facets of how a startups work and grow, and really from the inside and from the outside. Now, this question is kind of open-ended, and I've always wanted to ask you that question. What annoys you the most, or what are the few things that annoys you when you start working with an early stage startup?
What? First, I'd ask, why are you laughing, Naily? You know me too well.
Yeah,
How much time do we have? No, I'm kidding.
exactly. As much time as you want, Rich. This is your show.
Okay, look, all seriousness, I think, yeah, I think I could break it down into two sort of areas. A lot of founders come to us, or like however they, whether it's thinking of them joining the accelerator or talking to me personally, as a potential client, they think they're ready for funding. And look, you would know as much as anyone that sometimes founders do get funded really early, and it's very conceptual stage. They find that that magical angel that just loves them and their team and the concept, and they haven't got any traction, and will invest early. But that's rare from my experience. And I just think that a lot of founders think they're investable or they're ready, and they're really far from it. And that's for a lot of reasons without unpacking that. So just to answer your question, to come back, you got to stop me from going down rabbit holes, because I will. But just thinking that they're investable and they're not, that would have to be the biggest key point. And that would then be like, okay, well, why aren't they investable? There's a lot of things that we work on in terms of all the areas. Are they solving the right problem? Is it the right solution to solve that problem? Are they talking to the right customer? Very specifically, what, drilling down to persona detail, not high level. Their go to market, what's in their pitch deck, etc. What are they saying? How they're forecasting, the market, etc. And the opportunity to an investor. There's so much that has not been worked on thoroughly when we meet these founders who say, "Oh, we're ready I'm looking for investment." When I say, "How can I help you?" It's really interesting that you don't get founders saying, "I think I need help with my customer development," or "Could you look at the persona of my customer, who I think my customer is," or "Could you look at my product and dive deep into the product and tell me if there's anything I could do to improve that?" It's always funding. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's probably one.
But I guess this also stems from one of the things that's been happening a lot. I think obviously with the current crisis, which has been current for a while now, with the current crisis that led to investors tightening up their belts, is this all things that's kind of starting to change the messaging a little bit. Because before that, what I saw a lot on LinkedIn, especially for those who have a good idea, they coming onto the startup world, maybe they don't have a startup background, or they don't even have a technology background, coming onto the world, and what they see in terms of messaging was get investment as quick as you can, get investment to run as fast as you can, not so much thinking about bootstrapping and how to do bootstrapping well, which product ideation and validation is actually a really strong tool for a company that will start bootstrapping and is the first friend and family round and the likes, and of course as the product grow as well. Do you think that this messaging has an impact on the perception that as a startup, my first priority is to get funding, rather than thinking about, yes, I know that funding will be important at a certain point, but is it going down that road at the beginning? Is it actually right for me? And even in the future, the VC world or VC funding, is that even right for what I'm building in the first place?
Yeah, yeah. A few things from that. I think in one of your last podcasts, you were interviewing a lady that you guys were talking about how founders can test and start getting some proof of concept without having to actually build an MVP in the form. Like, an MVP doesn't necessarily mean building some kind of platform that their end goal would be in terms of a product. You could use tools like WhatsApp and some other tools I recall from your discussion. So they're the things that, because let me wind back to the start of that question. What are you using that funding for? What do you need that funding for? Is usually the question I ask, and most of the time I get it's to build the product and it's to market the product. Well, there's a saying, it's nail it before you scale it. So if you don't nail it, meaning getting your product market fit, how on earth what are you scaling? What are you going to market? Certainly, like I think I mentioned to you at the start of this, that we're testing some LinkedIn ads at the moment for our platform, but we're not needing investment for that, because it's just testing messaging, testing different platforms, and do A/B testing on lots of different things, messaging, images, etc. So I just think, why do you need? I'd be asking, why do you need the funding? And if it is to market the business, well, what are you marketing? Do you actually know that this is exactly the version? If I was to be really honest with you, I don't know whether our version is the one we're going to end up with. But it's the start, and it's after 8 prototypes to get to the beta, and then from there it's like, let's see what happens here. So that's that. And then I guess to build, coming back to what you said, well, I need that money to build. Well, why are you building it out? What have you done? Show us the steps, your progressive steps of different basic prototypes that showed the basic functionality of what you're trying to achieve in terms of solving the problem for this customer. But if they're leapfrogging ahead, especially a technical founder, not to pick on them, but those who have the ability to build something quickly and probably at a lower expense rather, end up building things that they haven't tested correctly, and that sort of swings back into something you said earlier about the validation stage, which is something that that I work on with founders.
I'm glad you've mentioned specifically the technical founders. There's a lot of discussion, again, wider discussion, focus a lot on the assumption that technical founders have an easier life when it comes to building their tech startups compared to the non-technical founders, which I believe it's kind of not really accurate, because you can be a non-technical founder. Of course, the issue of understanding technology and how to piece the things together could be a huge learning curve. Yet, as a technical founder, I found, and me as well, coming from a technical background and building my own company, what I see a lot is that there are a lot of different skill sets that really forms an entrepreneur and a founder. I could be good on the coding aspect, understanding a platform, but it doesn't actually mean that I can even describe that in a non-technical jargon way that will push investors or customers to run a mile. So I think it's really good to keep that perspective in mind when we look at technical founders, and go back to the question, am I building the right thing, before I can even start thinking about the tiny features and which platform I'm going to use, which language, and all those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, when I've worked with founders in the past, both within the accelerator and out, doing it once is just not enough. And what I'm constantly saying is it's a constant process. We're still doing it. We're still testing, and we've got pretty much a full-blown beta product out in the market now. But we're still grabbing founders and saying, hey, test this, try this. What do you think of this? Is that the right price? And are you expecting the right features on this page and that page? It just is continuous. And what we see is, quite often, I've done some testing. I've got what some founders have said, or sorry, that was in my case. Some of my customers are saying, and all right, we're ready to build. We're ready to go. We've got this, initial validation, but I just think it's a continuous journey. Ideally hold on to some early adopters, some potential customers you've spoken to right at the beginning, and bring them along on that journey and show them different versions of whatever your prototype is, whether it's like a basic tool you're using, the existing tools like WhatsApp, whatever it is, and then just continuously adding and showing the new versions. And it's going to get to a point where you say, I've got enough yeses and individuals giving me the nod here to say this is exactly what they need to solve this problem. But then that's another whole discussion about how do you get buy-in, and are they really just nodding their head, and the whole process. I think you've heard me talk about this before, where using the mum test is a good one, and not interviewing customers in a biased way. And that's also another problem. I see, if I was able to circle back to one of the things you talked about, asking about what are the things that sort of frustrate you, it's the funding, but it's also not doing enough validation, or doing the validation properly. And I've sat in interviews with clients who ask me to, and founders of all kinds, and they sell the idea. Would this be great to solve your problem? And it's like, well, they're going to most likely say yes, because most people don't like conflict, and most people are just going to agree. But yeah, if anyone hasn't read the mum test book, it's definitely a book to read, because it gives very specific and excellent examples of what not to do in terms of interviewing your customer, and the types of methods to be able to genuinely flush out the truths, rather than someone trying to put on a facade to you just purely out of kindness, because that's quite a human trait. We want to be nice to the person. Yeah, sure. I do agree with you, but they're not. They're smiling and grinning, but you ask them to pull out a credit card, or would you mind, if I got you to do a prepayment, or whatever version of that you do, to really show they're telling you the truth and they would pay for this. And so I think, in summary of what I'm saying there, is the quality of the validation work is usually not up to par in most cases.
And to add to that, I'll say also, just use your family and friends as a practice interview rather than a real interview, because your family, friends, some of your colleagues, depending on how close they are to you, might say yes to whatever you're building because it makes sense to them, or maybe because they don't want to upset you, they want you to feel supported. They will answer questions based on what they believe would be good for you, but not with a view of this was a product in the market that someone I don't know was building. How would that answer that? Now, one thing that I'd like to go back to that you've just mentioned, Rich, was on this idea of going out there, especially as part of the validation. First, it was it's a repetitive process. You do it once, you do it twice, and as you've mentioned, MentorLab, you probably the eighth iteration, but it's not finished as you're still going out, doing a little bit of work, going out there, testing the market, testing the messages and the likes. Now, when it comes to the people that you involve, especially when it comes to things like surveys and interviews, can you talk us through a strategy that startups can implement as well so that they don't suffer through the struggles of, first, where do I find those people? And secondly, when I go back the fourth iteration, who can I go to and ask for feedback?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I have a strategy that I find works where I talk about going out wide, casting the net out wide first. So in order to do that, I mean, I've heard other professionals and different individuals that are experienced in ideation that, they do it the opposite way. For me, cast out the net wide. And to do that, that is finding online audiences first. And there are a lot of tools that you can use to do that. One of my favorite tools to use is Prolific. We brought that into the accelerator, and we had a nice partnership with the guys, and they came in and did a talk and showed the founders how to use it. But essentially, it's an audience building tool, and you can say, look, I think my audience, because this is all assumptions, remember, I think my audience is male, female, both, with children, without children, living in this demographic, this area, earning this sort of money, this type of job. What else can you put in there? I think even religious beliefs, lots of things like that. And you can build a persona that you're assuming. And you can send out, what you do is you basically connect, you do a survey using survey tools. Survey Monkey, obviously. Typeform is one that I like using. You create your survey, and they're free if you keep your survey questions down to 10. And if you don't and you want to ask more, I encourage you to ask more. The first couple I would do as the free tool. So you can see this is really not, you don't need funding to do this. And as you get more and more involved and deeper, then you might want to pay, and they're very cheap. It might be £25 a month, and then you can ask lots of different questions, and you can do things like, if they answer yes to this, go to that question. If they answer no, go to this question. So it gets quite, I'm making it sound complex, but it's actually quite easy to use. Then you would probably be looking at spending anywhere between £50 and £100 on Prolific to go out to around about 100 individuals to 200 individuals. It does depend on how you set it up. Now, I think to myself, okay, if I went out to 200 individuals who I think are my audience, what a great start. Okay. Then you would look at those answers and responses. And here's the thing, Nayli, this is a real crucial thing. Interpreting. It's one thing going out and doing all that work and getting the data. The second crucial thing is how you interpret that data. And I see too many times where I've asked for the responses, and I've asked for the founder's summary, and they're putting people in the yes pile that they're kind of really not in the yes pile if you really look at their answers. And there are a number of tricks and tools without, I won't go down a rabbit hole here, but there's ways to ask certain questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate this? And then somewhere down further in the questionnaire, ask the same question but differently, or ask them to free type And it's amazing what information you get from people when they free type. Yeah. So there's a lot of different little things you can do, but that's just the start. But then out of that, let's say you did it for 100 people, you probably find 30 or 40 that you go, aha, here's our potential customer here. Discount these guys, right? Because they're not our customer. So like in our case, not every founder is a customer that we see. It's a very specific founder. And we didn't know that until we did these surveys, until we started fine tuning about where that founder is, what their mindset is, the mindset of not wanting to join an accelerator and the reasons behind that. We dug deep into those issues. Why is it a problem to join a 3-month accelerator? Why don't you want to give equity, etc.? We learned everything there could be to learn about those issues that those founders were having. And then we sent out another survey, and we kept those 30 out of the 100 we wanted, but then we added more new respondents. And as we kept going, I think we did like 5 or 6, we kept fine-tuning our questions and digging, and here's the key: understanding our persona more and more as we went on. Then, because I think some of your listeners will go, what about face-to-face interviews?
Yes.
Then we took some of those 30 from the front of all the first interviews and started asking, would you mind, because you can chat to them, Nayli, would you mind if I got some time face-to-face on a Zoom call? And you might give them something. You might say, look, for doing so, if you join the platform when we release it, we'll give you this, that, the other. And it's interesting how many people will come forward and say, yeah, I'm happy to give you some time. So then so what I was, in summary, cast the net out wide, learn. It's almost like an iteration of your product. Your interviewing process or your validation process is the same. So learn, adjust your questions, start adding some face-to-face interviews, and then that process continues. And we don't do the surveys anymore because I think we had up to 500 last count. And now we've done about 150 or so face-to-face interviews, and that continues because of our learnings. I don't feel that, look, you can go straight into face-to-face interviews, but I think the learning curve is quicker, and this is my point. The learning curve is quicker for a founder to understand their customer better and the relationship their customer has with the problem they're trying to solve by doing the wide net version, that strategy, and doing so with online tools. And then they can come in and start digging deep into face-to-face interviews from what they've learned from the online version. I hope that made sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to play it back, just a quick summary, as there's something that you've said there is quite exciting, and my questions run away, but I will come back. Because what I love about what I love about what you've just described is a slight change in the way of thinking of many people out there. Some people might put in, they might have a survey, have a few questions in addition to the structures and what to ask and what not to ask. That's one thing on the side. But usually there's no goals of how many responses we would like to have. And they might stop at having 20, 50, and that's the entire validation or the entire initial survey as part of the ideation. So I've been working with founders that come and says, oh yes, we've done just the one round of going and asking questions, and that's it. Whereas from what you're saying is a continuous process. Just as you will develop using whether it's agile or whatever flavor of agile that you use, you look at what are the features that we're building and we do that in 2 week sprints. The same mindset happens at the very early stage when you are still going through the ideation either of a new startup or a new product feature that you will kind of build. And I think that's definitely something worth emphasizing, as it's not something that you do once. But don't as well go for 500 responses at the beginning and stop there. The
And
wins come
that's what
from.
a lot of founders
Mhm.
do, if I could add. Sorry,
Yeah.
Noli, but yeah,
Mhm.
and that's what a lot of founders do. I've done 500, but then what do you do with that? And did you ask the right questions? And what came out of those discussions, or the results or the answers that you got? And a lot of founders actually, are just interpreting that incorrectly. Going, look, this founder said, sorry, I'm saying founder because it's for me, but this customer said yes, and it looks like they're interested in this product, but it's so far from whether they will pull out their credit card to pay for it. It's so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is quite exciting and a mindset shift on the way founders approach doing this research is to really nurture the pool of people that they've already had, especially those who have answered questions and left their details, even in email. If someone has already done that, then use that and use different techniques to make sure that when you go back to future round, if that matches the persona you want to continue with, how do you invite them to continue answering other questions, or maybe eventually to one-to-one stage in terms of interviews and the likes. The aspect I love to tag onto that, think about that as even just research can actually be a marketing tool. So the people who are vaguely interested could be your first potential customers, and you don't know about that. Yet most people, they will go do the really hard work to maybe run interviews, which is even more time consuming, or do surveys. They have all these emails, but they don't think about how do we nurture them to keep them engaged, even if we are not launching a version of a prototype or an MVP later on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always encourage founders that when they're doing these interviews, whether they are online tools, whether they are face to face, in whatever format, even asking someone, like, we're all out and about and busy, and we're in co-working spaces, or at a bus stop, or in a coffee shop. I've in a Starbucks once, on one of their in Vauxhall, they have this great big communal table, and I was sat there waiting to get to another meeting. Thought I'd go in for a coffee, and just was overhearing a couple of people speaking next to me who were seemingly working on a startup, and I just piped in, and then gave them a few comments and some feedback, and they said, what are you doing? And I said, all right, fantastic. And so on the spot, just obviously I couldn't get out my interview questions and make it formal, but I thought of the top few questions I'd want to ask them from those list of survey questions, and then just asked them, and then mentally noted it, and just said, okay, would you guys mind joining my mailing list? Yeah, love to, right? And they're still on the mailing list today. So at every opportunity, not only asking people, surveying them informally rather than formally, but ask them to join. To your point, join your mailing list, and you can build up a mailing list pretty quickly. We built up several hundred real fast, but just anybody that we spoke to, inviting them to a landing page, which just ask for email details and some basic information. So yeah, it's a very valid point, and it's a start of a community that you're building, right? And then as it grows, and they tell other people, etc., and on off it goes. And it's a shame that you see some founders who go through this process, get the product, a basic version of their product or an MVP out, and they've got no audience. So hang on, haven't you spoken to, let's look back here, haven't you spoken to 300 people? You told me. How have none of them been invited to a mailing list, which again is free, if you use MailChimp up to a certain point, right? So this is not costing money. You don't need funding.
Exactly. You don't need funding, especially when it comes to getting this type of traction that will eventually multiply. On that aspect, I've got one question. In terms of how would you build a mailing list and get enough people interested when you are focusing more on a B2B? Because sometimes B2C, reaching out to B2C customers could be different than reaching out to B2B customers. Before we get to that question, we're going to go through our quick fire round questions. So I've got a few questions that will help us to get into your head, even
Okay.
just to go and see there. I mean, I'm really
This
excited
could be
already.
dangerous.
Yes. Warning everybody, don't go anywhere because you don't
Yeah.
want to miss that. The first question is the most difficult one. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, that's why I'm hesitating is because sadly I'm both. Yeah,
Interesting.
so burning the
Fair enough.
candle at both ends. Yeah, yeah. I'm often seen working late at night, just because I have a second wind, or I will think of something after dinner and go, oh, I'll just jump on and do that, and then get distracted, and then the next thing you're working until late at night. But I definitely am an early bird at the same time. So
Well, it's a new
that's kind
perspective.
of sitting on the fence, I realize. Sorry, but yeah, I am
No,
both sides.
there's no there's no right or wrong. It's actually
Yeah.
interesting to see how your energy level and how you manage that. And I use this question, in fact, to encourage founders to look differently at the 9 to 5. When you're a founder, there's no Monday to Friday and there's no 9 to 5. So it's interesting to see how yours is not even just early bird and not just
Yeah,
night.
it's not. No, I mean, I obviously I'm doing other work besides, while we were getting MentorLabs, my co-founder Liam and I were getting MentorLabs off the ground and built. We've both got our jobs, if you like to say our day jobs, and it's really challenging. Like 2023 for me was, cut down on trips away. I'm always traveling, cut down on, social uh, events and get-togethers, and not seeing people that you would normally see, friends and family, as much. And it was a bit of do or die. And it was like, you're either going to cut this out to make room for working on your new project, and that's what we've both had to do. And it's been tough. We've had our moments. I'm not painting this in any sort of rosy format. We're just like every
Yeah.
other founder, where we've pulled our hair out, literally, and and just like we've had our moments of just despair and thinking, what are we doing? And then we had to pick ourselves back up, and we fell off the horse a few times along the way. So don't worry, it's normal for everyone.
Thanks for sharing that openly. Sometimes there's a lot of people underestimate the journey of being an entrepreneur, as many of us have gone through what you've described, Rich. And in fact, at last episode, when I was speaking to the guest, Catherine Ann Reed, she mentioned that she went to a networking event, and someone at the event described being an entrepreneur, being a founder, as close to being a psychopath. Now, I don't 100% agree on the word psychopath, but what I do like about that description is people who have a passion that and go through a lot of sacrifices, and despite everything else that could be happening in their lives, they have a clear vision and they have the drive to go. But it doesn't mean that we are not going through the highs and lows of wanting to build something. And the other reason why I really love what you just said, and opening up so transparently to our audience, there's also the assumption that if you are someone who's been in the startup world like you've had for several years, pretty much an expert, that the journey will be just straightforward. And
Yeah.
a lot of people forget that there is still a journey regardless of the experience that you've had in the past.
Yeah, 100%. Like I was on a call on some office hours with one of our founders from the past cohort, and we're just talking about hustling. And he was asking me, something specific about, how would I do this and that and that, and get in contact with this person. And we jumped on LinkedIn and found that person, and found a few avenues as to how to contact that company. And I said, there's no magic formula. Like, I'm not sure if you're looking to me to go, hang on, I can click my fingers and make that happen because of my experience in the ecosystem. But, those that know me know, I've reached out to a lot of people lately, to look at how we can collaborate, how we can just help each other. And the important thing is not, you know, not being the one always asking for something, but how you can help the other side, as the other party as well. So without going down a rabbit hole on how to network and partner up with people, but it's the same for all of us. We've had our highs and we've had a lot of lows in this journey, and it's not easy. We might have some extra insights into the ecosystem and maybe some more contacts perhaps, but it's just as hard for us to do this as it is for any founder starting.
On that note, what is one mistake that you've made that founders should watch out for?
Just one.
Let's just stop at one.
Okay, I think so. My co-founder Liam is a UX designer, and I've got very much a product background in tech startups, and I think we have built a beta, and our tech partners call it beta plus or MVP plus, because it's quite a substantial product, and it's generally not the version you would probably see for a startup like us. But we do have the expertise in-house, as well as a tech partner that has given us the ability to produce something a little bit more complex. And I feel we've even suffered from the putting too much into the product in terms of features and things, even though we had prototypes that we tested and got a lot of feedback on what founders wanted to see and so forth. It's a complex beta, and I think we, having our time again, and I'm not speaking out of school, my co-founder's not here, but I really do believe that we could have trimmed things up and done things a little more leaner in terms of the beta product we released. Yeah.
Interesting to hear that, because that's something I see a lot as well in startups. Is very easy to get excited, especially when you have the inside knowledge to run with that. The
absolutely.
Last question on the quickfire round is, what is the best day of your professional life?
Oh, wow. The best day.
Yes. And for anyone listening, Rich didn't get, I don't send those questions to my guests, so Rich is literally just thinking really hard right now.
Yeah, I am, of my career.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I would like to think it was my realization that I wanted to work with startups. So I know that probably is a bit of a broad sort of response, but I was asked to join a founding team in Australia it wasn't really a tech, it's more of a traditional sort of marketing consumer goods company. I was asked to join that. I at the time had no idea what a startup was, and I had the privilege of joining a small team and growing that company from scratch. I recall the CEO taking me out for dinner and us writing ideas down on napkins and things. I came from that background, and he'd heard my experience, and he's like, I want this guy to be on my founding team. I was a kid, literally. I was half my age, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But look, 10 years of we grew that company, and there was an exit, and everything we saw, everything I saw in my experience that I gained from starting a business from nothing to it turning over 50 million was incredible. And I think when there was the exit and the parent company, the company that bought the company out was based here in the UK, and then they asked me to come over for a contract. And without getting into that detail, that was for a few years, and then I was like, well, okay, what do I do with myself? And it was when I actually spoke to a career coach and formally employed his services. And when he sat me down and said, have you ever thought of working for startups? And as I said, I had no idea what that was. And then he took me to a startup event. And I just remember sitting there thinking, this is exactly what I want to do. And that was about 10, 12 years ago, I think, 12 years ago. And I was excited by the buzz. I was excited by people getting up and talking about the companies they were launching, and this is the tech side of things. There were tech companies. Some of them, there were some pictures at that event, and it was just like a light bulb going off in my own head, going, I want to work in this sector. This is what excites me, because this career coach could hear the excitement in my voice as I was telling the story about this company we started in Australia and how we grew it from nothing to what we grew it to. So I'm not sure if that's a bit of a long-winded response. Yes, it was a long-winded response, but that I was very excited to understand that I really want to work with new companies and founders and help them launch their business.
Thanks for taking us on the journey, because I could actually see Rich changing age in my mind. I've got like a Netflix movie going through.
Lots of hair.
Exactly, lots of hair. And as you go into the startups, it is a fast-paced world, and the hair gets left on the journey.
As the frustrations grew. No, you don't need funding. Not yet, anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's definitely the message for today. You don't need funding, stop building, and really focus on the customers and what you want. We're getting towards the end of the episode, but I cannot miss the opportunity of having Rich Cristina here and not tackle even very quickly, tackle the challenge of validating or even being in the ideation space or stage of your startup when you are looking for a B2B. So, Rich, what are some advice that you can give to startups really struggling to figure out what are the best strategy to get companies, especially when we want to look at interviews and contacts and just their interest, even to add them on the mailing list, as you suggested earlier in this episode?
Yeah, look, I appreciate it. I'm more a B2C guy, so I've put that caveat down, but certainly have helped a lot of founders who are doing B2B, especially like a SaaS product, etc. And I don't think it's anything that your audience wouldn't know already. And I come back to that comment about hustling, which I had with the previous founder before this interview. And you've got to hustle, and that means doing everything, like getting into community. Like I spent most of the weekend trying to get into a whole bunch of Facebook groups, and I got rejected by half of them because I wasn't the right person and all that. I'm come back to that conversation of we're the same as everyone else, but it's getting into those community groups and if you're a founder with a great product that you think is great and solving a great problem that other companies have, then go and speak about it. Tell us why you think it's a problem and what you've discovered about this problem as such. And look for community groups to have those discussions and start becoming the expert on that topic expert. And that goes without saying on LinkedIn, and posting and writing blogs and posting about it. And you soon will get picked up and notice that, you're the subject matter expert on this problem. And, there are a lot of groups on LinkedIn, Meetup, etc., where you can go and speak, or you could just post. Create a basic landing page and start putting those posts on there, like you're doing, Naily. You've got a plethora of videos where you've got all that content. You become an expert once you start developing such content. And that to me would be the way to build an audience. And there is obviously the reach outs, hey Naily, I see you're a mate with so and so who's a project leader of XYZ company, I'd love an introduction. Or and networking events is I really can't say enough how important. I was living at. I might as well not have had my flat at the time when I first joined the ecosystem. I wouldn't hesitate to say I was at probably 3 or 4 network events a week.
Wow.
I met everyone I could meet. And just again, without going down a rabbit hole, it's not to talk about how to network, because there is a way to network, but just how can I help you, how can I, and when you come as the the new kid on the block and you're green and go, hey, I'd love to work in the ecosystem and I know nothing about it, you're the expert, Naily. Most of the time you're like, hey, I'm going to show you, because you love to share your experience. So you can come at it as green as that, or once you get your footing, then start saying, well, how can I help you as well? And how can we help each other? And then off it goes. I've got several thousand connections on LinkedIn now. And there's usually someone I can find if someone needs to be introduced to someone. But yeah, it's not easy. That there isn't any magic pill that you can take and go, all of a sudden I can build an audience of 1,000 or 2,000 companies. But without getting into a marketing discussion, because this is a marketing experts discussion, there's all sorts of things and offers and promotions and early offers and things that you can offer these companies should your product be interesting to them. So for the first early adopters or early companies coming on board, or using a company as a test. I know specifically one of our alumni has doing that with 3 or 4 companies with his SaaS product. What better way to test your product than give it to them, say, here, use this and tell us what you think. And in one case, another one I just thought of, one of those customers is becoming an investor in one of our alumni's business. There's lots of ideas and lots of tricks. There's no one easy way, but it is a hustle.
Thanks, and I think you've actually shared quite a few ideas. So if you're listening, you really want to get into the B2B space, stop listening and moving and doing whatever the hell you're doing. Take a pen and paper and write down all of the ideas that Rich has mentioned and go through them. And if you are stuck and want to find experts that can help you with some of those ideas and take you further, remember that MentorLabs is an amazing platform where you can have a one-to-one discussion with a mentor that is focused on helping you understand your idea, giving you idea, brainstorm with you and moving you forward without having to worry about establishing a long-term commitment when you first start. But of course, if you want to, then MentorLabs platform can also support you with that and more. Thanks so much, Rich, for being a wonderful guest on this platform. And before we go, is there anything else that you want us to know about you, how to reach out to you, and more importantly, about the MentorLabs launch?
Look, thank you, Naily, for having me. It's been a fun and enjoyable discussion. You always bring the fun to the discussions and make it really interesting. You're a great host. Thank you. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be here. We just in case listeners want to know, we are mentorlabs.tech, TECH. That's where you can find the platform. Basically the beta is out. Our desktop beta is ready, so it's out there. We're currently building the mobile responsive version in the next week or so, but yeah, that's where you'll find us, and hopefully founders can find the right mentor for them to help them get their product launch.
Thank you. Thanks again to the audience coming to this episode, and do remember that we go live once a week. And if you have any questions specifically targeting product and platform, I'm already here to help you. as I've done with several other startups. But do remember, dream, build, and play. Let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.